Okay, welcome back, and we'll continue. This is we are in week 6. So today, this video we'll looking at module number 4 of week 6. So we'll, as I said, that now we have finished our transport collection. Initially, we started with, if you remember from the very beginning, we started with waste quantity, like how to get the waste quantity, how to do the waste quality. Then we also talked about what are the rules associated with that, municipal solid waste management rules, smart city initiative, Swachh Bharat mission. We talked about all that aspect. Then we also then we looked into how, once we know how much waste is produced and what is the type of the waste, how to collect it, what are the different ways the collection can be done, how to design a collection system. So we did a overview of that, and then now we will look at, since now we have already collected the waste, we have to treat this waste. So from this video onwards, we will be talking about the treatment. And when we talk about the treatment, essentially when we say about the municipal solid waste, the most common treatment methods is used either the biological treatment or thermal treatment. So in biological treatment, we have two aspects. One is the anaerobic and one is aerobic. So aerobic treatment, we call it composting. When we say composting, it is essentially an aerobic treatment. We supply air in some way or other, and then anaerobic is your anaerobic digester. So where you have methane gas being produced, which you can capture. Landfills are kind of anaerobic treatment as well, but it takes a longer period of time. We'll talk about that, and the concept of bioreactor landfill and all that will be there. So we'll get started with the first is the biological treatment. So let's talk about biological treatment, and some of the stuff that we covered in the very beginning in the first week. You will see some of those slides coming back again, because if you remember, we said that in the first week we covered kind of an overview. Now we are going into deeper into each of the topics. So you will see some of the slides repeating here, but just to recap, and so that you know, if you have forgotten, you will remember now. So let's talk about this biological treatment of waste. So when we say biological treatment, what is biological treatment? So first of all, the question again, for anything you said, okay, what and why, those are two very important aspects. So what is biological treatment? Essentially what we are trying to do here is we are converting the organic matter, we are converting the organic substance in the waste to a more stabilized form through the use of biological organisms. So essentially what we are doing, we are making use of the biological organisms, those biological organisms which is available in nature, or if it's not present in that particular area, we provide biological organisms, and then essentially our what we are trying to do is we make the conditions suitable for these biological organisms, so that these organisms can do the work for us. And when we say do the work for us, we are saying that essentially they will be able to degrade the waste. And when we say degradation of waste, essentially what it means is that it's a conversion of the organic substrate. So this is the organic substrate. So the amount of organics present in the waste, and that kind of dictates how much like air you need to supply in aerobic system, or how much gas will be produced in anaerobic system. So whatever is the organics present, that organics will get converted to either CO2 in the aerobic system, and or it will get converted to methane and CO2 in the anaerobic system. So it's conversion of organic substrate. So organic substrate, when it converts, essentially it gets oxidized. So organic substance will get oxidized, and then something has to get reduced. Remember that oxidation, reduction, the things that we have talked about in chemistry. So it's organic substance will get oxidized and in an aerobic system, and then something has to get reduced. So for something to get reduced in more technical like a chemistry term, we call it something has to accept the electron, because when somebody is getting like one element or a compound is getting oxidized, when things are getting oxidized, electrons are released. So electron cannot just be it cannot be just like a floating around. Some like electron has to go somewhere. So there are electron acceptors, and those electron acceptors are essentially, those are the oxidizing agents. So we have oxygen, nitrate, sulfate, those are our electron acceptors, because oxygen will accept electron and get reduced, sulfate will get accept electron and get to sulfide, and then nitrate to nitrite, and all those things happen. So, here the conversion of organic substrate in the waste to a more stabilized through the use of biological organisms. So, that is the biological treatment. So, this is what we call biological treatment. Now, here in this particular course, we are referring to solid waste, because if you remember earlier we talked about solid waste could be liquid as well, it could be, but here we are essentially talking about solid waste. We are not talking about the wastewater. There is if you have taken a wastewater course, this biological treatment of wastewater and the biological treatment of solid waste, the concept is essentially the same. Here only we are looking at high solid content, and in wastewater you are looking at low solids content. So, that is the difference. Otherwise, the concept and all steps are the same, as you will see, as if you have taken a like a wastewater course, you will see a lot of similar concept which being talked over here as well. So, what type of solid waste are biologically treated? Municipal solid waste, MSW, especially among this MSW these days a very like food waste. Food waste is throughout the world, there is a push to collect this food waste separately and do biological treatment, and composting is popular, but with many, especially in semi-urban areas or the rural areas, composting is great. But in like highly dense urban areas, composting requires more land, and there, of course, whenever you set up any plant, we talked about that, you need to do the market analysis, you need to do the economic survey, whether this plant, the product that is produced from the plant will be able to sell those products. So, if you are making compost, say in Delhi, and if you cannot sell that compost in Delhi, then the plant cannot survive for a long period of time, because it has to make money. So, similarly in urban areas globally, more popular is anaerobic digestion. So, at least what they collect the food waste separate, do the anaerobic digestion, produce the methane gas, and that methane gas can be used as an energy source, and then the sludge, which is almost down to say 30% of so you take the sludge and then you do the composting on the sludge with mixing with other yard waste, garden waste, and those kind of waste with that. So, what type of coming back here, municipal solid waste, food waste especially, sometimes you also hear a term like organic fraction of municipal solid waste. You will hear OFMSW. That is the organic fraction of municipal solid waste. So, that is also used, term is used for doing the biological treatment. Then the sewage sludge can be used, agricultural waste done quite a bit, industrial waste is also done, even some of the contaminated sites with some of these industrial waste is also biologically treated. Hazardous waste can be done as well. So, these are the different types of waste which could be biologically treated, and when we say it is biologically treated, essentially our microorganisms should be able to use that waste as a food source. So, they should be able to use the organic fraction of that waste as a food source, and if they can do that, it can be biologically treated. So, what are the treatment types we have in terms of, here we are looking at the treatment types. We have essentially two biological treatment. We have aerobic, which is the composting, and then we have anaerobic, which is the anaerobic digestion. Landfills are also anaerobic system. So, this is there are two types of biological treatment, aerobic and anaerobic. So, in this video and the subsequent video, we will be looking at first the aerobic and then we will go into the anaerobic system. So, in terms of how they are done. Okay. So, coming to like a municipal, this particular pie chart, we had looked at this pie chart earlier as well. This was done like earlier you have seen this pie chart long ago, and now we will kind of just see it one more time, just to recap, do the recap for you, so that you remember like what we were talking about earlier. So, this is the typical municipal solid waste composition, where we have paper is this is coming from this is a typical example of a western world. So, so here you see more paper, lot of paper there, which is paper is there, yard trimmings is the garden waste, food scraps, plastics, metals, rubber, leather, textile. Don't worry too much about the percentages. If you put a Indian waste here, we'll have more food waste, less paper, some garden waste, and then we have plastic metals will also be less. We'll have a lot of other materials like a dirt and all those things showing up here as well. So essentially what I'm trying to say is in terms of different so if you look at these components, so there are these kind of components are present in the in any waste stream. The percentages will differ. If you go to any place in the world, the percentages differ from place to place, but this is the different like the composition of typical components of a municipal solid waste. So about among all these, not everything will degrade in a biological system. For example, glass or your plastics, the metals, typically they will not degrade. There are some research going on in terms of biodegradability of plastics these days, but for most part this does not really degrade that much in an anaerobic system. So what will degrade? That is what the stuff that will degrade is called biodegradable components. So we have this biodegradable components are the ones which will degrade. So that's the biodegradable components. So now what are these biodegradable components? They are paper, cardboard, food waste, yard waste or the garden waste, wood, leather and rubber. I put a question mark there because in theory they do, but in practical they don't. So wood, leather and rubber actually takes a long period of time to degrade. In theory they do degrade, but in practice you don't see much degradation happening to them. So for most part you have paper, cardboard, food waste and yard waste, or yard waste is garden waste. So these are the ones which will typically degrade in a anaerobic or aerobic system when you try to do this biological treatment. So in terms of the total, if you remember the previous pie chart, in terms of the total component that we have to identify these components, because these are the ones which will degrade. When we say these are the components which will degrade, that means when we are trying to supply air for the composting process, we need to supply air for the degradation of only these 4 components, because the others are not going to react anyway. So when you are supplying air, you need to know, essentially you need to supply oxygen, but since we cannot supply oxygen directly, we supply air. So when you are supplying air, you need to know what is the composition of this part. So this part composition is important. So we need to first identify this part of component. That's called biodegradable components or biological volatile solids, which we'll talk about in a minute. So this is again, you saw this slide earlier. So we had this is a composition of waste like the one we had just few slides back, where we had paper, cardboard, steel, metals and all those. Rather than putting the pie chart in this, if you put the pie chart in this fashion, where you have, of course there will be some moisture. So we have some moisture which is as the water, which will be there in the waste. Then we have some inorganic fraction. This we have this red pie is our inorganic fraction, which has glass, metal, dirt and then some inorganic part of biodegradable material. So this is our inorganic fraction present there. Then we have this portion is your biological volatile solids. Now what is biological volatile solids? It is the organic fraction of the biodegradable component which will get destroyed during treatment. Destroyed is actually kind of a, just to get your attention here, destroyed, I think destroyed may not be a very good word to choose in this particular, because it is not destroyed, it basically changes its form. And I have said that I think several times, that anything on the periodic table we cannot really destroy it, we can only change its form from one form to another form. So here organic fraction of the biodegradable component which is reacting during the treatment, rather than using the destroyed term we should use maybe reacting during the treatment, or which will take part into the reaction. So those are the but this is the one which will do the reaction. And then we have residual volatile solids. Residual volatile solid means it is there, but its organic fraction, but that remains after treatment. Certain for example, if you have if you are doing composting or any like a biological treatment, many say something like lignin doesn't degrade very easily. So, although it is degradable, but it will not degrade very easily. Other thing is that like you have certain biodegradable component, but it's the bacteria cannot really chew it. So, bacteria cannot really eat that. So, that will not degrade. And then the next is plastics as well. Plastics is part of the volatile solid. Like if you do a Vs calculation, plastic will become part of that, but when you are talking about biological volatile solid, plastic is not part of that. So, this plus this, these two together is what is known as Vs, volatile solids. These two together is our Vs. Now, this part is the BVS and this is called RVS. So, biological volatile solids and this is our residual volatile solid. So, BVS plus RVS is equal to Vs. So, that is remember that. So, volatile solid which you can do it calculate in the lab is BVS plus RVS. So, that is RVS. So, this is your like a that is just for you should remember that it is when we say Vs, because when we go do the thermal treatment we will talk about Vs there again, volatile solid, because that will do the reaction in a thermal treatment. For biological treatment, it is not the Vs part, it is the BVS part, the biological volatile solid, the fraction of the volatile solid which will react, which on which the bacteria will act on. So, rather than which will bacteria will act on and do like we need to know that fraction. So, in terms of this BVS fraction, so this is what is taking part in the reaction, this particular pie chart is what is taking part in the reaction. So, for any waste component, if we are trying to design a compost plant, we need to know the composition of this particular pie, like a part of the pie, and also like the amount, the composition or in terms of what kind of things are present, and also what is the amount, like how much of it is present, because this is what is going to do the reaction. Others will all the moisture may moisture may help, but this part and this part will just be there and then it will go into the system and it will go out of the system. So, it is not going to all react. So, if you think about a box, say this, if you think about a box here, saying that this is my compost system as a box, we have certain input and we will have certain output. So, this fraction and this fraction, these two will actually get into the system and then they will just go out of the system, they are not going to react at all. What is going to react is this fraction. So, we have to design our air injection system and all those things for this particular fraction. So, first we need to know the quantity of this fraction as well as the quality of this fraction. So, when I say quality, it is basically the composition, and we will talk about that, how to do those calculations. So, in terms of the biology which happens in a biological treatment system, it is aerobic as well as anaerobic, we talked about that. Aerobic, there are diverse set of bacteria. There are fungi, there are the bacteria, insects and worms, and all those things are there in the aerobic system, as you can see some of those worms here as well. And then anaerobic is a group of bacteria, it is fairly well defined. In this particular class, we will not go into detail about the type of bacteria, aerobic, the names and type and family and all that, because that is it is not a microbiology course or stuff. It's we are focusing on in terms of how to design this compost system or how to design the anaerobic digester, that too in from a big picture perspective. So, but for your information, you should know that there are a diverse set of bacteria in both aerobic system and anaerobic system, which has been identified. People have documented all that, and fungi, bacteria, insects and worms, they are also take part in composting, like aerobic composting process. And for anaerobic, again we have sulfur reducers, we have methanogens, we have acidogens, and we will talk about those as well, but those are also kind of present. So, the biochemical process, again as I said earlier, the process is to transform the organic fraction. The process is to transform the organic fraction of MSW into a gas, liquid and solid conversion product. So, we have this OF-MSW. So, this is what OF-MSW. So, that is your organic fraction of MSW into either gets converted to gas or liquid or solid conversion product. So, either of these can come, either gas, liquid or solid. Now, the process that are more commonly used for transformation of organic waste is aerobic composting. That is your very commonly used. Low solids anaerobic digestion and high solids anaerobic digestion, those things are also used, low solids and high solids. High solids anaerobic digestion followed by aerobic composting. So, this is what is actually getting a lot of attention these days, like can we do a high solids anaerobic digestion up front, because say if you collect the food waste, although just recently I saw some articles. These days a lot of people are posting articles on Facebook and other places where in terms of the food waste. So, amount of food waste that will generate, and it says something around 40% of the food sold in North America actually goes into the waste. And think about that, 40% of the food, that is a lot of food waste. There have been a study which was done saying that a typical North American household, which is a family of 4, like wife, husband and 2 kids, they are wasting nearly $1,000 worth of food every year. So, $1,000 worth food every year is just getting wasted. So, that food waste that is being produced for the people are losing around, every family is losing $1,000. So, think $1,000 is not a joke, it's a very decent amount of money, can possibly buy good gift for 4 people. Actually, for all of them they can buy a good Christmas gift for around $250 each, but that around $1,000 worth of food waste is wasted, while there are a lot of hunger in the world, and even hunger in the United States too. So, but this food waste, rather than sending them to the landfill where gas will be produced, not captured very well, because it's these days focus is that first of all we should not try to produce, we should try to cut down the amount of food waste that is produced. Unless that happens, so during this transition phase, unless that happens, when the food waste, wastage of food is really suppressed down, what we can do is at least to try to recover some of the material, recover some of the energy from these food waste which is thrown away. So, that's where this biochemical process comes in picture, where you can use these different technique, and one of the technique used is high solids anaerobic digestion followed by aerobic composting. So, here what we are trying to say is you take all these food waste, you have this food waste which is high solids, and then you do the anaerobic digestion, you produce methane, and you use that methane as an energy source, and then whatever is the sludge is, you mix it, that sludge over here with some other waste stream, and then you do the aerobic composting. So, that is what can be done as well. And then of course, so it again depends on what that particular city or city requires, or what will work in that particular area as well. So, that is kind of in like a just quick description of what is the biochemical process, what are the different examples. Now, we will go a little bit into the basic principles of this biological process, so that you have a better understanding of that. So, in terms of the basic principle, let us get started on that. So, there are different terminology you will see, and which is used, which is we need to get those data as well for. So, one of the important stuff is the organic matter, because it is the organic matter which is going to get degraded in the composting or anaerobic process. So, organic material composes nearly 30 to 80% of MSW, depending on where you are. It is around 30 to 80% of municipal solid waste is organic material. In the Indian context, the number is actually maybe around 60 to 80% or something like that, or 50 to 80%. So, again we do not have a very good data, we really need to collect, these are all guesstimates. When we say from the Indian data, it is many times it is a guesstimate, we do not have good quality Indian data, and that is one thing we need to really get a good quality in pan Indian data, where we can have data from each major city, what is the type of waste and all that. So, that although things may seem repetitive because when we do it at different cities, but we need to do that, we need to do so that there will be some differences there as well, which will help with our design steps. So, so proximate analysis, as you know, proximate analysis will give you water content, volatile content, fixed carbon, non-combustible, as and all those kind of stuff. So, water content, volatile combustible matter, fixed carbon, non-combustible residue, all these things can be measured using the proximate analysis. Then and what are the principal components of the organic fraction? We have proteins, we have amino acids, lipids, carbohydrates, cellulose, lignin. So, these are all different material which is there in terms of the what is the like components present in MSW. So, these are the components which is available there in the in MSW. So, then in terms of biological conversion, conversion is the major objective is to convert the organic matter in waste to a stable end product. So, it can be done aerobically, which is a composting process where we have a succession of facultative and obligate aerobic microorganisms. So, it is a facultative aerobes and the obligate aerobic microorganisms. They feed on the organic matter, converting into a new cell tissue. So, essentially it is getting converted to a new cell tissue. They reproduce, they produce more and more microorganisms. So, the basically what is happening in a composting process in a very simple way, we have this food waste or we have this organic fraction of municipal solid waste. This is a source of food, like this is a food source for these microorganisms. So, microorganisms will come in, will try to eat these, and then in the process of eating this, they oxidize the organic matter and then CO2 gas is produced. So, that is and then once this organic matter has been stabilized, then it becomes more like a fertilizer kind of material, because it has some nitrogen, it has phosphorus, it has potassium, and it has good soil like property. So, it becomes a good quality compost as long as you keep the organic fraction of municipal solid waste separate. So, that is in terms of the aerobic. Anaerobically, it is the fermentation process, where enzyme transformation, it is a hydrolysis. So, you have the high molecular weight compound, MWT is your high molecular weight compound into a compound suitable for use as a source for energy and cell tissue. So, this high molecular weight compound is getting degraded, getting broken down by the set of bacteria into a smaller chain compound. So, basically anaerobic microbes, what they do, they hydrolyze the organic polymers and lipids into fatty acids, monosaccharides and amino acids. So, they convert these organic polymers and lipids into these relatively simple form, where the microorganisms can have access to it, where they can use these as a food source and degrade it even further. So, this is in the anaerobic system, you have that is happening, and then you have the bacterial conversion, where the second set of microorganisms convert these intermediate products into lower molecular weight compounds. For example, acetogens ferments this component to simple organic acid like acetic acid. So, bacterium conversion of the lower MWT compounds into simple end product, principal methane and CO2, basically just what like say in a just what happens in a landfill. So, that is how this biological conversion happens in terms of biological treatment. So, in terms of this is anaerobic, we will talk about that later. So, but in terms of this in general biological conversion, you have a microorganism doing the job for you. What you are doing is you are making the life suitable for microorganisms to grow and to degrade this organic material. So, this is in kind of nutshell in terms of what the biological conversion is. So, we will continue this discussion in the next video. And again, this is a very common way of treating. Composting has been very popular in India. There are some compost plants which did not work out. There are some issues associated with that. So, we will talk about those things as well in this course as we make progress. So, it's, as I said, it will be more practically oriented course, where, and again, we want your feedback. We want your feedback. We want your questions. Any confusion, any clarification you need, use the discussion board and communicate to us through that. Okay, thank you, and then I will see you in the next video.